everybody. Hope you're doing well. We are just having some laughs, waiting on you guys to jump in with us. So glad you're with us tonight on our Wednesday night, our weekly midweek conversations that we have on all of our streaming platforms, whether you're watching on the Radiate Church page, Pastor Chuck's page, Pastor Travis's page, my page, Pastor Chris's page, whoever shared it. We're just glad that you're on and with us. We're going to have a great conversation tonight. It's going to be a great time. And so it means a lot. It means a lot that you're on with us. And just want to thank you for that. I'm gonna talk about a few things, and then we'll get into the depth of the conversation. But I just want to go ahead and introduce Pastor Travis as the executive pastor at Radiate Church. He is the brains behind a lot of the dealings that you see through Radiate Church, and we're grateful for him. We got Pastor Chuck Barano from Harvest Church in Sand Springs, Oklahoma, and he's the lead pastor out there. A great friend of mine for 12 years? Did we just celebrate our 12-year anniversary? Our 12 friendship? Years. Mm-hmm. The only reason I know that is because of the cake picture that always gets shared every single year. It's by your wife every single year. So we're grateful for you, Stephanie. Thank you. And then behind the scenes, you guys don't know this. I don't give him enough credit on these things. It's Pastor Chris Kelly, a worship and creative pastor at Radiate. He does an amazing job making sure this stuff happens. We are glad that you're on with us. So like and share the video, please. We'd love for you to invite some people to be a part of it. Also, don't hesitate to engage. Write some comments, questions, thoughts in the chat there. We'd love to we do get to see those, so we'd love to answer any of those. I hope you guys are having a great summer. If you're going to the beach, if you're doing anything for the 4th of July, please be safe. Please be careful. And the sad part in that, guys, is I feel like that's me just saying that somebody's going to get mad just saying be safe, So just be safe, be smart, have a good time, but don't get sick. We don't need no more Rona going around. We need college football and we need church in the fall. So let's be smart, and we need school. Now, Radiate Church has been doing so much in the community. We want to say thank you for jumping in, sharing the streams. Thank you so much for being a part of building a wheelchair ramp this past Saturday for family in our community. That was an amazing thing. We have in July, we have several days where you can sign up to help another needy family with their home and help repair that. And so we'd love for you to join some of our staff and our leaders in that endeavor and help make that happen. So thank you guys for all that you're doing. I do want to approach something, guys, before we get into the Acts 2 and 42. If you're with us, go ahead and turn on your Bibles to Acts 2:42. That's really where we're at tonight. But I feel like I got to approach something, man. And y'all say this, and it's just this thought. So with everything going on right now, everybody seems to be on high alert, right? Everything's crazy. Everybody, if I'm going to be honest, has had entirely too much time on their hands to create conspiracy theories and thought processes and things in their mind, right? And I'm not saying like all that's terrible, but here's what I am saying. I've been a little frustrated, or not frustrated, I've been a little discouraged at the fighting that I've been seeing on social media. Y'all, like, I want to go back to something that I preached in the Pivot series, and it is, we will be known by our love. I'm seeing more people that are fighting about masks than they are telling people about Jesus. Like, man, if we had the same amount of passion for Jesus as we do about whether you do or do not wear a mask, this world would be changed. Like, guys, come on, here's all I want to say about it, right? For me, I wear a mask. You know why I wear a mask? I have a pacemaker. I have a heart condition. So if I catch anything that could remotely affect my heart, it could be deathly for me. I have an 86-year-old grandfather that I go and see and help take care of. I have grandparents that are in mid-80s that I go and see. I have a mother and a mother-in-law that's beat cancer and their immune system has never recovered. Like, I just want to care. So I do, but that doesn't mean that you don't if you don't wear one. It doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you don't love it. Like, let's just get off the fighting right now. Sure. We fight about this conspiracy and masks are from this and masks mean that. Like, sometimes things just are at face value. Like, here's what I know. This is crazy. Listen to this. In Kershaw County alone, which is where Radiate Church is at, in Kershaw County alone, Pastor Travis, Pastor Chris, I hadn't even told y'all this. In the past 30 days, we've had more cases than we had the entire first 100 days.
Wow.
We've had more cases in the past 30 days than we had in the first 100 days. Think about that. Like, okay, some of you are watching this and you're going, I don't believe that stuff. I'm not wearing a mask. Then don't wear a mask. But, like, or some of you are like, you have to wear a mask. Like, okay, then wear it. But don't vilify the next person. If Pastor Travis doesn't want to wear a mask, it's okay. He's still a pretty good guy. And it doesn't mean that he hates your guts. Like, he just doesn't. And if Pastor Chuck wants to, then that's okay. He's still a pretty, like, I just wanted to hit that because, guys, I've been seeing stuff that, and it's why, part of the reason I feel like we have to have this conversation about the church, because here's what I know. I told Pastor Chuck this on the phone today. We were talking. I feel like when the church as we know it was taken away, people lost their minds. Like, we don't know how to act right now. Like, we can't love somebody and still disagree, right? Like, I don't have to agree with you. I still love you and believe in you, right? And I don't have to make you think I agree with you. I still love you. Like, that's why I feel like we've got to have this conversation we've been having for the past 2 weeks, and this week included, as we go into week 3 of talking about the purpose and the power of the church, because when something's taken away, we have to go back and learn the original purpose and power and promise of it. And so we've talked about, it's based out of Acts 2:42. It says they were continually devoting themselves. Here's what they were devoting themselves to: the apostles' teaching. So we talked about that in week 1. If you missed that one, go back and watch it. To fellowship. So we talked about fellowship or koinonia last week and the power of that, right? Number 3, which is tonight, to the breaking of bread. And then next week we're going to talk about into prayer. And so the breaking of bread. And I want you to understand something. We're not having these conversations because we're out of stuff to talk about. This is a conversation because I think it can really change our mentality of the church and help us grow deeper in the reality of this stuff and help us learn how to love one another. So let me start. I know I kind of went on something there with the mask thing, and it's not so much about the mask. It's just about love and tolerance and appreciation for humankind, right? It's almost like we stopped fighting about skin color and now we fight about what we wear on our face. So let me ask, and I'll give you guys permission to go back and address any of that you want to, and even disagree if you really want to. But in Acts 2:42, it says they were devoted to apostles' teaching, to fellowship, and to the breaking of the bread. So here's the first question. What is the breaking of the bread in this context? And what does it mean that they were actually devoted to when they did that? So whichever one wants to take it first, Pastor Travis, Pastor Chuck, y'all go for it.
Well, I'll say this. Pastor Chuck has to take it because we got to address the fact that today is his birthday and he has got to have the leadoff thought. He has made another revolution around the sun.
Oh, let's go. Happy birthday to you. Hey, in the chat, everybody just write happy birthday, Pastor Chuck, in the chat for us. Yeah,
let's let him take the leadoff spot.
Yep, go for it.
Appreciate you rolling that tire right on over me. Just got ran over. So, man, Pastor Brandon, I completely agree with you. I think everybody has gone nuts. We have learned how to not have conversation. Like if I disagree with you, you disagree with me, then we are mortal enemies, and it's just not so. And I agree that talking about this stuff is not. It's vital because. So I remember Miles Monroe years ago talking about purpose and understanding your purpose, and he said, if I grab a screwdriver and I don't know what its purpose is, I may try to use it to hammer a nail.
That's good.
And he said, and I may eventually get the job done, but it's going to take a whole lot longer. it's going to take a whole lot more effort, and there's going to be a lot more pain than if I'd have used the right tool for the right job. And I just believe, man, in the time we're living in with church, I think we have misunderstood its purpose, because now we're making it political. You know, if you don't agree with the Republican side, you can't be saved. Or if you don't believe with, you know, the Democratic agenda, then you can't be, you know what I'm saying? And we pitted it, we're pitting everyone against each other, and we're using the church as a pawn. But the purpose of the church, if you look in Acts chapter 2, 42 through 47, which is what we've been talking about, it is that four-legged stool. And so when it comes to the breaking of bread, so there are two ways that people look at it. Theologians look at it as you study it out, and it really is this two-way. It is the Lord's Supper, which is communion.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or it's they've gathered together and have a meal.
Yeah.
And that really is, and I know that you know, that's real deep. And we right there, we've got it, you know, but those are the two ways in every area that I studied. And most of them believe it was really a mix of the two. It wasn't an either or.
Yes.
It was a mix of the two, because bread and wine are both staples in a traditional Jewish meal.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's not uncommon, especially back in that day, for a family to gather together or friends to gather together and have a meal. And towards the end of the meal, they would turn it and go, let's not end this without remembering.
Yeah.
And so then they would take a roll, they would take the bread, and they would take the wine, and they would, in that moment, but it wasn't like this religious thing. It was more of a spontaneous, hey guys, man, we've had a great time together, but let's not walk away from this without taking time to remember. And so that's my kickoff to this. Pastor Travis, Pastor Brandon, man, you take it. Y'all tell us what the Lord's really saying.
Oh my God.
Okay.
This is you stole every note that I had for point one. Wrote down, but so you nailed it. But Pastor Brandon, to go back for a minute to what you said, I've been struggling to kind of figure out during this incredibly bizarre year that we've had, that started out what looked like completely normal, and now we went through tremendous change. And I've tried to figure out, make some sort of understanding of what's going on here and how the heck are people responding. And to lend to the point that you opened up with, I was trying to get a lens to what I feel like how people are approaching the faith right now and approaching each other. And it's almost as if our church is being consumed like it's some sort of medication, to where, when I've got that weekly dose, I'm not really being very vicious to people online. I'm a little more caring to people in person. I feel a little more connected to God. But when that medicine stops, the symptoms come back. The symptoms that were always there are now at the surface. And and you guys know this. We've spent this entire series, and we're going to talk even more tonight about that. The church is not designed to be medication. It's designed to be a new community, a new identity that we can assume as a believer. And the cool thing about what we're talking tonight, and to add to what Pastor Chuck said, is absolutely those two things. So if we were to look at them together, well, what the heck's going on? It's small groups of people who are coming together, doing something in a very communal fashion with Jesus at the center. It's all centered around him. It will culminate, that moment of community is going to culminate into remembering him.
Yeah. No, I think you're 100% right. And I think what has happened is the church as we know it has been taken. And it was easy to treat symptoms before, when the true thing that you never want to treat a symptom, because nothing heals from treating a symptom. If you treat a symptom, you just feel better for a short amount of time. But if you can treat the root the cause of it all. If we can treat, what's happening at below the surface, then the symptoms change by themselves because now you've healed the problem.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wanted to have this conversation about the church. The church is not there to treat symptoms. The church is there for people to experience God that heals roots. And when we fall in love with the idea of Jesus, we fall in love with the idea that he's going to cure all our symptoms. We fall in love with the idea that if I follow God, if I follow Jesus, I won't be sick, I won't be poor, it'll be good days, I can have this, I got God on my side, I can do whatever I want to do, and it's okay, and that's falling in love with Jesus because I fall in love with what he gives. But whenever I fall in love with the person of Jesus, it's not about what I can get away with. It's what do I get to do for it?
Yeah.
Like what is I live my life in response, not in earning, but in response to what he's already done. Religion says do. God's kingdom says done. And so I get to live my life in response to that, and I get to build his kingdom in response to that. And when, going back to breaking of the bread, I actually think it all connects in here because, like you guys already said, it was a twofold thing. People go, well, what did it mean they were taking communion, or did it mean they were eating meals? Well, both. Because they often, as Pastor Chuck said, often took communion at meals together. In fact, later on in verse, in verse 46, it says, day by day continue in one mind in the temple. And then it says, and breaking bread from house to house, they were taking their meals together with gladness and sincerity of heart. So they were eating meals and they were doing, it was both. It wasn't an either or, it was both and. Now, what is the importance of that is this is how I think about it. The first two stools, or legs of the stool, were devoted to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, right? Well, those are large gathering focuses. This one is to eating meals together and breaking bread, and then the second one is prayer. Small gathering. There was really two things that the church was built on that we've got to encounter. So it was built on two things, two sections. So large group, small group. Apostles' teaching, fellowship, breaking of bread. Groups, man, we got to get in groups. We've got to get in relationship. We've got to get in interpersonal relationships with one another, and then in prayer. So large group, small group, but focused around Jesus. Yeah. That's the goal. It's not focused around me. Man, if I could tell anybody this one thing, God is not here to make you happy.
That's good.
Jesus did not die to put a smile on your face. He didn't. There are people in China today in underground churches getting persecuted that have not had a smile on their face from the day they started following Jesus. Jesus did not die to put a smile on your face. Jesus died to save your soul.
Yep.
God came as a man, not so that you could look at him and go, you get me, man. You get me. I can do this. You get it. No, he came as a man so that he could look at us and go, I've been there. I know what you've been through, and I know what it takes to redeem the human soul.
Yep.
This thing ain't about me.
Yep.
And when we forget, man, this is why I'm really passionate about tonight, because, guys, I'm going to be real with both of you, and then we'll get into the next question. I believe as Christians, as humans, as followers of Jesus, we've lost the art of personal relationships. We don't want relationships, we want convenience.
Sure.
Yeah. Our idea of relationship is clicking a like and comment on somebody's status.
Sure.
And we've lost the idea of sitting at a table in a small group. That's what life groups are, as Pastor Chuck calls them, circles.
Mm-hmm.
It's built around this idea. Sit around and talk. Talk. Let me hear your words rather than just see your words.
Yeah.
Let me feel your hand. Support me even when we don't agree.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like we've lost the art of personal relationships, and to me, it's detrimental to spiritual growth, and it's detrimental to the Big C Church, because everything, hear me, everything is built in the kingdom. It moves at the speed of trust, and it moves at the speed of relationships. Mm-hmm. We've got to be together. Got to be together in this thing. It's hard to hate somebody that you pray for and that you spend time with.
That's right.
It's hard. I can't do it. So taking all that, make that translate like the breaking of the bread. Make that translatable for us today. Make that mean something. What does it mean for us to be devoted to the breaking of bread today? And I know I've kind of spilled over into that with my thoughts, but y'all give me your thoughts on that. Let's go with let's let Pastor Travis go first on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Pastor. And I could not agree with you more with everything that you just shared with each and every person hanging out with us tonight. You did say the obvious, right? One of the most obvious things we can do to come together over breaking of bread is, man, just get around people. And this thing is not designed to be about judging you, whether you do it in person, you do it on a Zoom call, whatever. It's the heart around coming around other people and putting Jesus at the center. But I want to share something, a scripture that I think about a lot whenever I think about, what we call life groups, right? Which are just gatherings of community, connection, and care, and circles. It's a verse, it's James 5:16, right? It says that to confess our sins to one another so that we may be healed. And I know James isn't writing to say, when I confess my sins to you, Pastor Brandon, you, Pastor Chuck, that I'm going to be saved or healed because of that in an eternal sense. But man, in a temporal sense, if I'm not around a small group of people with Jesus at the center, how can I ever get things off my chest and share them with somebody and go, guys, I need someone who can pray for me. I need somebody I can make an authentic connection with. I need a community that can surround me right now because I'm struggling. I need someone who can care for me because I cannot care for myself. Man, that's the power of gathering small with Jesus at the center and remembering him. I want to share one other thing that I thought was really powerful. In Luke chapter 24, verse 35, Jesus is just risen, right? And he's beginning to appear to his disciples. And, he's on the way, on the road to Emmaus. And, he's picked up by a few guys, and they're kind of checking him out because he seems to be talking a little bit like the risen Jesus, right? They sit down with him, and it really resonates with him. He is who he says he is when he takes the bread and he takes the cup.
Yeah.
Right. There's nothing better than getting around people and us gathering and putting Jesus at the center. And it will always be a great opportunity for us to refocus our trust and our faith in him and be able to wrestle with things together. Life throws our way.
It's good.
Pastor Chuck, what are your thoughts on that?
So my thinking, I keep going back to the analogy of sitting around the table that Pastor Brandon was talking about earlier. And I think that going back even further to us talking about how, people have just gotten accustomed to, saying what they want. And if you don't agree with me, all bets are off, we're mortal enemies. And I think we've gotten to that place because we're not sitting around the table. Now, whether that's in a Zoom meeting or but we've gotten comfortable being at home and watching the world through the lens of Facebook and Instagram. And so we see everybody else's opinions, everybody else's, posts. And now I'm not accountable to anybody. Like you said, I don't have to care for someone. So I can just allow my opinions to rule and reign. And I think that's what, when we talk about what does it mean to be devoted to the breaking of bread, it's devoted to relationship.
It's good.
Bishop Tony said years ago, this was when I was in college. He said, everything in the kingdom revolves around relationship.
Sure.
And if they were going to be devoted to anything, they were devoted to the apostles' teaching, right? But then they were devoted to relationship, being in these small communities of people in their homes, doing life together. And I know that that's a catchphrase that has been probably way overused in the last few years, but really living their lives together in that small community with Jesus at the center, as Pastor Travis said. And so I think it really was, like you said, a life group or a circle. It's being committed to that, going, you know what? I don't feel like getting out of my house tonight and going and meeting with my life group, or I don't feel like, logging on to the Zoom meeting, or the Facebook room. I don't feel like that, but I'm committed to it. I'm devoted to it because I see that it has value in my life, and not just a superficial value as in, well, they do something for me, but it adds value to me.
Yeah.
Just like my relationship with you guys add value to my life. That adds value. So
that's good.
So anyway, that's my thoughts on what does it mean to be devoted.
I think you said a key word in there, and I don't even know if you realized it, was the word accountable.
That's good.
Let's break that down. Able to have an account of something. Well, accountable is I'm accountable to someone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to do what I want when I never have to answer for it.
Yeah.
So it's easy for me to have inappropriate conversations and thoughts, to be affirming of things that are incorrect, to whatever, just throw it out there, right? I can keep going examples. It's easy for me to do that when I never have to have an account.
Yeah.
So I think about it like this. I think about a ledger, and Pastor Travis, you and In Rhythm Consulting do this for Radiate, but there's a ledger, and we have to make an account for every penny that's spent. And our third-party financial institution wants an account for that. Well, here's the truth, right? That means that I'm account-able. I have an account for that. It's the same thing with thoughts. It's the same thing with actions. It's the same thing with ideas. It's the same thing with spiritual growth. It's easy for me to not grow spiritually if I never have to make an account for it.
Sure.
If nobody ever looks at me and says, "Did you read this week?" No, I didn't. And so they were the reason, I believe, the reason that relationships is one of the legs to the stool of the church in the beginning and now is because relationships present accountability, and accountability presents growth. And so if we're accountable, we're gonna grow. But that's also why it's hard that if you want to be mentored, you have to submit yourself to somebody.
Sure.
You have to look at them and go, I'm going to make time, I'm going to listen, and I'm going to execute, right? Why? Because there's accountability. And so I guess at the sake of not wanting to ramble, we have to understand that they were breaking bread in multiple senses, but they were devoted to accountability. They were devoted to sitting around. If you're around somebody enough, like you guys could look at me and go, "Hey, Pastor," or "Hey, Brandon, what's wrong with you today, man? You good? Like you feel all right? You all right?" You know why? Because we're around each other.
Yep.
Like, maybe at different times and in different settings, but we're around each other. And so it's hard to do that when we don't submit ourselves in relationship to accountability. So all that conversation would seem to affirm the importance of circles or groups or whatever you want to call it, right? And see, so tell me, this is kind of going back on a conversation and kind of it's really bringing it all kind of overlapping. Why is groups, circles, relationships, breaking bread together, why is all that so important? How is that gonna help me, help you, or help me with God? Pastor Chuck, it's your birthday. Go for it.
Well, I think because number one, it holds you accountable. I know that a lot of groups do this. I don't know if you guys do it, but I've seen a lot of groups. They have like a group covenant or a group statement that they sign going in that, hey, I'm signing up for this group, but I'm committing to this for this period of time. And the reason that they do that is because they want to be able to hold them accountable, because that accountability it strengthens that relationship. And then it gives me the ability to look at you, Pastor Travis, and go, hey, man, you committed to be a part of this, but I hadn't seen you in a few weeks. Is everything okay? Like, and it's not a looking down my nose at, but it's hey, you've given us as a group access into. It also ties us to the apostles' doctrine or teaching. It takes us into the Word, because we do grow together. And as we'll see next week, it ties us in because we pray for one another. We're connected to one another. We're partnering with one another. To me, those things really do. And even though, the first two legs are centered around the large group gathering, what I found is most of the time the circles that I'm a part of, when the smaller group gatherings enter into the larger group gatherings, that's the family. And it gives, and no matter how large the church it allows that church to have that small church family feel, because now you've got your family, you've got your group, you've got your people. And when you guys get together, man, one runs up to the front for prayer, all of a sudden, who's going to run up? It's their circle. It's their life group. It's their people. Yeah. And so I believe that's why it's important, man, because it really ties, all of the legs, eventually they come together. They're connected in some way. And I believe that life groups, circles, small group system, whatever you want to call it, I believe that's a main way that they're all connected.
Sure.
That's good.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah. A couple thoughts on this, and they're kind of all swirling around my brain really quick. Number one, I'm not a zoologist at all, so I don't know the hard data on this, but lone wolves die young. They're pack animals, and I think that's something that's innate inside of us, right? That God designed us for. We can look back in Ecclesiastes 4. Man, it talks about the power of just groups of people who are united and aligned and who are looking out for each other, right? That James 5:16. So, like I said, it's a very important passage to me whenever I think about groups, because, man, there is no other scenario where, you're going to be able to offload something that you're wrestling with people who genuinely want to help you with that, talk you through it, be there for you, be accountable for you. And I mean, let's think about like practical ways to be accountable. Hey man, are you still drinking? Hey man, you still watching porn? Hey man, are you still, lying to your family when you're out, shooting pool and getting plastered or whatever? Those are the type faculties that really help facilitate growth, And just to speak to what we do a little bit here at Radiate Church, and this matters, is we set our life group on 3 C's. We set them up to create authentic connections between individuals, to create communities, right? Small pods of people who are sharing experiences and sharing life together, and who care for each other, right? And that's in practical ways. Hey, my tire's blown out. I need somebody to pick me up right now. In very unconventional ways. Hey, I experienced a loss in my family. I'm definitely alone. And, there was a moment that I experienced one day, whenever we were previously meeting, where I was talking to a guy in the lobby before the experience. And, I'm a sociable guy, so I don't have a problem going up and talking to anybody else. So I went up and talked to somebody I'd never seen before. I said, hey, what's your name? And blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, hey, tell me a little bit about, what brought you here today? And this is what the guy told me. I'll never forget this. He said, man, I just want to go be around people who aren't on drugs. And I never forgot about that. And it reminds me of something. Everyone in life is looking for something. And this is especially true for church. No one will ever walk through the door of a church that's not looking for something. If you're a non-believer, man, you're looking for answers to some big life questions. Now, if you're a believer, you're looking for purpose. You're looking for family. You're looking for community, people like you. And man, that's what makes groups and coming together in small settings so special, man. You get around like-minded people. You get to talk about Jesus. That's where you have the wormhole conversations where you leave afterwards. You go, oh my God, I never read that before. Now I got to look at life all completely different, Yeah. It's also the conversation we go, and I never really told anybody I was struggling with that thing. I'm really glad I got that off my chest, and I'm glad somebody's going to help me with it now. And man, they're so important for what we're doing today. And I don't think anybody could go through life without a crew with them. So, but Pastor, what are your thoughts on that? Because you've been in ministry for quite a long time, and you've probably seen groups ministry change a lot over your career. And what can you kind of speak into that works, like across the bar, it works?
Yeah. So, I mean, groups has gone from Sunday school, which is the groups session before Sunday sermons.
Yeah.
So it's going from Sunday school to Wednesday night classes, and normally for younger people, to now it's meeting in homes throughout the week. And I think it just depends on your church.
Yeah.
So it fits us to have life groups because we're portable. We can only rent our space one day a week.
Yeah. So,
but I think regardless of what it is, what I've seen work is just relationships, man. I get so frustrated. Like, I know I'm on it, so I get the hypocrisy a little bit on this. That's where I get so frustrated with social media, because it's really not social. It's just media.
Sure.
It's drama media. Let's call it that, drama media. And like, we've substituted artificial algorithms for interpersonal relationships. And it's hard, Travis, because, and you and I have conversations all the time about groups at Radiate, because it's so important to what we do. And it's not just, listen, I want people to understand this. If your church offers groups, you may call Radiate home, you may call Harvest home, whatever church you call home. If your church offers groups, it's not a church growth strategy. It's a discipleship accountability method to help us all have relationship no matter where we are in life.
That's good.
And the groups can be, I hear people go, well, I don't know if I want to go to that group because there's only 2 or 3 people. Dude, to me, that's an opportunity for me to go in and be like, hey, I got some problems.
Yeah.
And I ain't got to worry about 15 people knowing them. I got to worry about 2.
Incredibly true.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, maybe if we'd all be a little more real about that stuff. And so, like, it's just what I've seen work is just relationship. Just, you can't take the heart, and you can't substitute relationships for anything else. And man, that's where hatred and disconnect come into play. And like, that's where people make the worst decisions after they're disconnected from relationships.
Yep.
Like, I don't have statistical data over that. I just have 18 years of ministry experience to tell me that.
Sure.
Like, hey, I made this decision and this is what I've been doing. Oh, yeah? Well, I noticed that about 6 months ago, you pulled out of your life group, that you weren't serving anymore. You came to church maybe every 3 weeks. You didn't really talk to anybody. Like, I noticed you kind of pulled away. Why was that? I was just trying to figure some things out, and then this happened. Well, do you know why? Because you weren't in relationship with people that were going to help you be the best version of yourself.
Yep. And
so, like, I think that's the key. In groups, there's this misconception at Radiate and possibly at Harvest, I don't know, that groups, and at churches all over, that groups don't happen in the summer. Hey, there may not be as many because people are going on vacation. Yeah. There's still groups.
Yeah.
There's still like I'm in one. I'm in yours, Pastor Travis.
Yeah.
And yours and your wife, and you were just telling me you thought that we were going to keep going because I had a mind fart and missed tonight. But like,
which is
I missed it.
Yeah,
it happens. I missed it.
Yeah,
and I hated it. Yeah. And you were like, "We're going to keep going," and something in me was like, "Oh, yay, that's good. Let's keep doing that." Like we got to get in a group. And here's the thing too: teams can be groups.
Yep.
Spend time with your teams. Like it's the kingdom of God and Christianity is not as difficult as we make it. It's really about relationships. Right. And so that's what I've seen that works. I don't think there's I know a guy that just reinstituted last year Sunday school again, old school Sunday school in a very contemporary modern church. And it's going great for him. All he's doing is he's just changing the groups model for his church and it works. So I think it's just relationships. So here's the last thing, right? So we got a few minutes, but here's the last thing. How can whoever's watching this tonight, how can we help others be a part of the breaking of the bread experience of church? How can I make that the best for me? And how can I help others jump into that? Pastor Travis, why don't you take that?
Yeah, I'll take it really quick and let you guys capstone this entire thing and land the plane tonight. But man, if I had any final thought just in terms of what it looks like to help others be a part of that. Number one, invite people, man. If you've got a group, if you got a formal group, like you signed up in Planning Center for one, whatever, invite people to be a part of that. And because this is the quickest way to get them to kick the tires on their faith, right? Just to get her in your house that they've already been to, sit at your table they'll sit with a handful of people they don't know for an hour, you know what I mean, over nachos or whatever. So it's a great way to be missional. But one last thing on that, in the more formal sense of the breaking of the bread and in performing the Lord's Supper, communion, whatever you want to call it. There's one powerful thing about that I think that we all need to process whenever we're gathering as a group is think about what I'm about to say. Imagine how powerful of a night it is if the three of us were to get on a call that's not live stream like this one is right now, right? And we're sharing things about our lives that we wouldn't want anyone else to know. And at the end of that, we reflect back on what Jesus did for us. Think about what I'm about to say. In that moment, how powerful is it to realize that all the sin and failure and shortcomings that got brought up were blotted out instantaneously at one moment in time for each and every one of us. So the crappiest things I could ever share with you guys, you walk away from that table going, well, crap, if Jesus died for Pastor Travis and all those crappy things he just told us about himself. And I can really think back on things that I'm very shameful of that Jesus died for me for. So it is a unifying moment for us to go, there cannot be a sin brought up that his blood was not powerful enough to overcome forever. And I think that's a powerful thing to walk out of a group knowing that, man, you can leave that baggage there, so that's where I'm at. Pastor Chuck,
wow.
What you got? How can we help others be part of the breaking of the bread in groups?
So I'm in a complete agreement with you. I think we have to create a culture of inviting. Like our people, we live in a culture of advertising. So people don't have, I don't have to tell you about a restaurant anymore and how good it is because they tell you themselves. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
sure.
You can watch a commercial and see.
Sure.
But there was a day when a new restaurant opened up in your town and you were listening to everybody else's opinions about that.
Yeah.
And man, I just think if we got back to grassroots invitation, our people took responsibility in themselves for going, you know what? Being a part of a a life group or a circle has so impacted my life. I see the value in it. Man, I'm going to tell everybody I sit around on Sunday. Yeah. I'm going to tell everybody in my neighborhood. I'm going to invite folks.
Yeah.
And I think we have become so cliquish that what we do is we get in our small groups and then we close it off. And we shield ourselves in so nobody else can penetrate the group, and it pushes people away. But if we broke that by creating that culture of invitation, and I do agree, I think that if Christ does not remain at the center, then it's nothing more than just a group to hang out with.
Sure.
And that's not bad, but that's not the purpose of the church either. Sure. Like at some point, he has to be brought in. And I think that's why it was, it meant so much. And that's why I think that there's so much debate in Acts 2:42 as to what it meant, because you can't really tell because it was so intertwined.
That's good. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so I think if that becomes such a part, we get around each other. I mean, you know, if everybody watching tonight or whoever watches this, if you were to watch prior to, like we weren't sitting here praying prior to, you know, we weren't having this holy moment. We were just joking around, having fun, right? Yeah. But we can also turn around at the same flip of the coin, and we can bring this thing in, start talking about the things of God, and you know what I'm saying? And there's nothing unholy about either one. It's so intertwined. Why? Because he's the center of everything we do.
Yeah, it's good.
And so, man, if you can create that culture where people really live with him at the center and they put people into that, I think that's key.
Man, that's both of those are so good. I keep getting drawn back to the scripture in verse 43 and then skipping down to verse 47 of Acts chapter 2. 43 says, everyone kept feeling a sense of awe, and many signs and wonders were taking place through the apostles. And then verse 47 says, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord was adding to their number day by day those who were being saved. Y'all, how powerful would it be to be able to go, hey, like, I've got this group of people. This is how I say it. I've got this group of people at Radiate Church, man, that just, listen, we don't always agree. You know, in fact, some of them drive me up a stinking wall. You know, but we love God. We have one common denominator. And it's God and his church and his kingdom. And you just got to come experience this thing. And I can't imagine. I was sitting here thinking about it. I was trying to really see what it felt like. But I can't imagine having a real encounter with Jesus. He saves my soul. You know, I feel that sense of awe that it talks about. And there's signs and wonders. Like, I think about all the signs and wonders that Radiate, and I know Harvest has had that, and I think about the people that have been physically healed, you know. Yeah. Pastor Mark, who after years of having a colon thing, a cancerous spot, and it just miraculously disappears one day. I think of Brian Goins, very similar situation. I think of marriages. I saw a picture the other day of a couple that celebrated an anniversary from Radiate. You know what they did? They took their divorce papers that they hadn't turned in yet, and they had them framed because it was what God could do. I think of the signs and wonders like that.
Yeah.
And then this is where I go, how can I not want to tell somebody to come and be a part of that? Like, not because of what he's done for me, but because somewhere in his infinite love, God goes, you know what? There's a little redneck guy from Elgin, South Carolina that nobody's ever heard of called Brandon, and I'm going to use him to start a church.
Sure.
Travis Lucas from Swansea. Is that right?
Swansea,
South Carolina. You know, Chuck Barano from Georgetown, South Carolina. Like, man, I'm going to use these guys to change the world. You know, put your name in there. And if God, here's what I know. If God never takes this pacemaker out of my chest, God never does anything else in my life, how can I still not tell people, guys, listen, there's a God, there's a guy that loves you so much he gave up everything he had. He came down from the loftiest position on the universe.
Yeah.
So that you and I had a chance.
Yep.
We had a chance. It almost saddens me to think of that people wouldn't want people to encounter that. And like, for me, it's the invitation. It's how can we be a part of that? Guys, listen, if you're part of a group, I know at Radiate, they don't have to go to Radiate to be a part of that group. Yeah. Bring them in. Just bring them in. Like, buy them a hamburger, let them sit there and listen and laugh.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and just invite people. One of the greatest things we can do right now is invite people on Sundays with a digital stream. What does it look like, man, to break bread together? I think it just looks like doing life and keeping the sacrifice of the bread and the sacrifice of the blood all at the center of it all, and just going, you know what? I give him everything. And dude, I just like, that's where I get more frustrated than anything, is when I'd rather tell people about a restaurant than I would about the bread of life. Yeah. As cheesy of an analogy as that is.
Yeah.
Or I'd rather sell a product more than I would tell somebody your soul matters to me. Yeah. Or I'd rather have you like me rather than just say, hey, man, there's something better for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so it got deep tonight, but like, I just think we've got to remember this part of it. There's a relational aspect of it, and that's part of the reason I can't wait to get back together on Sundays whenever the school district pulls the green light and lets us go. Like, let's go. It's time for relationship. But here's what I know. Dude, we can do that in groups through Zoom. Some groups meet through social distancing, whatever it is. Like, just do it.
Yeah.
Just get in a relationship. I want to leave with this challenge, right? You are better. I want to tell everybody, you're better than you think you are. You're loved. You're appreciated. Oh, I went away for a minute. Sorry. You're loved and appreciated. And I just want you to hear me when I say this. Jesus gave his life because he loves you. He trusts you. He wants you to know that John chapter 10, verse 10, he gave his life so that you can have life to the fullest. Not to the percentage, but to the fullest. Yeah. Get in a relationship with people that believe the same thing about you. Yeah. And let him change your life. And let them hold you accountable to that. Anything y'all want to add to that real quick, and then we'll close in prayer?
It's a great send-off.
Great.
Let's do this thing. Let's love God. Let's love others. Let's love God. Pastor Chuck, birthday prayer for us?
Sure, man. Let's do it. Father, I thank you. Man, I thank you for the relationships that you have forged in my own life. God, I thank you for the relationship between Harvest and Radiate. God, even as you take two organizations and forge relationships, Lord, I thank you that that's what it's all about.
That's right.
It's the building of relationships. And Father, I just pray for every person who has or is watching this stream, or for anyone who watches it this week, I just pray that you would allow them, that you would help them to step out of their comfort zone and into, God, a relationship, not only with you, but with others who are like-minded, others who would help solidify their relationship with you, hold them accountable, and help them to grow. And so, Father, I just pray that for them. I pray, God, that you'd help us to understand you, your word, And Father, I pray that you would let a devotion to those things grow within us. And Father, we thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I think if we will learn the purpose of the church and execute the purpose and the power of the church, I think it'll change everything, y'all. Absolutely. I believe in something that Willie George said a long time ago. I think it was Willie George. Might have been Bill Hybels, actually, now that I think about it. But the local church is the hope of the world because the local church is built on Jesus. So
Bill Hybels, yep.
I'm just, it was Bill Hybels. I knew you would know that. So I'm just excited about what God's doing. I think there's a shifting that's happening in people's lives. Let's get after it, man. Let's learn. Let's grow. Let's build those relationships. Guys, gentlemen, thank y'all for jumping in. We got one more next week, and then we changed it up a little bit. So we'll be together again next Wednesday at 8:30. It'll be a great time. Hope you are. Invite somebody with you. Sunday morning, 9:30 and 11 a.m. 9 and 11:30 a.m. 9:30 and 11 a.m.
Yeah. And
golly, what's going on? 9 and 11:30. 9:30 and 11 and 5 p.m. And then Chuck is at 10 a.m. Yep. So anyway, love you guys. I'll see y'all Sunday morning.
Yeah. We'll see you.